minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. You know what we're talking about today. That's right. Star Citizen. And I brought longtime friend, guest of the podcast, gameplay extraordinaire Twitch streamer, Xerostate.
I don't know if extraordinaire is the right word, but gameplay.
You should see my gameplay, dude.
Sort of.
Brought him on to talk
How you
about the state of Star Citizen. I am good, dude. I'm good. It's been a wild summer. I'm happy it's July because now it feels like it's definitively hot outside and I can finally go and get him water without feeling still cold. And Star Citizen is in its little, kind of in its information drought phase, I would say. I don't know about how you're feeling about it.
Well, there was just a Star Citizen Live. Well, when we're recording this yesterday, so it's still fresh. And the updates have been pretty good, I think. I mean, it seems like there's been some communication as far as like, this is what we're trying to do with this, and this is what we're trying to do with this. But it has been a little bit tough. This is the year of playability. And so it doesn't seem like there's not a lot of conversation about like mechanics, but big things that are coming.
Yeah.
But we've had some conversation about that more recently. But maybe for the past like month or two, it kind of has felt like, just play the game, just play the game. And there's a PTU happening and, worms and stuff. So
worms and stuff, dude. Yeah.
Worms and stuff. Yep.
Story of a bad vacation right there. Yeah, man. Ooh. I'm a very big features person. So it feels exaggerated to me, the information stuff. The interesting part about this year is like more is happening in Star Citizen ever before. I have definitely been more critical of the mechanics and feature side of this, but I feel like I've never seen this much flurry of activity in the game itself before. I don't know how you feeling about that.
It is interesting because what CIG has kind of said that they're going to be doing this year is playing out, right? So they kind of said like, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was kind of like, well, we're not going to be pushing as many mechanics and features and big stuff that breaks the game this year. We're going to be kind of pulling back and doing closer to monthly updates that focus on adding new narratives and adding new content within the current game, and of course, there's some kind of features being developed and things like that on the back end, and some little things kind of make their way in and some improvements and stuff. So it really does feel like the conversation around Star Citizen from players and developers, I think, too, and the gaming community at large is, how do I say it? It's more talkative, maybe is the right word at the moment. For the last probably 3 or 4 months, I would say that it just kind of seems like there's a constant conversation about the next update, and that's both a good thing and maybe a meh thing, in my opinion. But yeah. So yeah, I'd agree.
Definitely seems to fall in line with what they want, like to just keep the story rolling and to keep us going until Squadron 42 comes out.
Yep. And I think it's interesting about that is it's not a bad idea. I just wish that this had happened 6 years ago, or 4 years ago. And I don't mean to be like, I'm not trying to be like a negative Nancy about it, but it is what you kind of like. You're like, man, if 4 years ago they had said like, sod the game a little bit, we're going to put out narrative stuff, and maybe they didn't have some foundation in for that. Maybe there was some other blockers to that, but it felt like they were trying really hard to keep pushing Star Citizen. And it's like, I wonder what, maybe Squadron 42 wouldn't have gotten finished in time. That's all maybes, but
yeah.
Anyway,
dude,
if you're a Squadron 42 enjoyer, this is probably a good year for you.
I am. I've got some coverage coming out about Squadron 42 in a couple of weeks that I'm starting to work on, because after the recent digging into that game I've been doing, I'm actually a lot more excited for it. It sounds, I think, different than what a lot of us are expecting. But This isn't the Squadron
I
42
have
show.
I have been excited for Squadron 42 for a long time, and like you said,
Yeah.
you don't want to talk about it too much. But um, I played Descent and Descent Free Space as a kid, and that's the
Mhm.
reason why I play Star Citizen now, probably. And to have another single player space game that tells a good story, I like single player games, first off, especially pretty ones. And I just hope it's good. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, no, so do I. Now we're into it. Now I'm gonna keep going. It's part of a genre of games that I don't think we get enough of anymore because, well, for starters, multiplayer games make so much more money. They last so much longer. They're more viral. But also, even single player games have turned so much more towards just making an open world and then expecting the player to kind of make their story. That to
yeah,
see a game that's focused on being a story, but also within that story giving the player choice of how to tackle levels and approaches is it's pretty rare now.
yeah, that is, and it's. I mean, I think that's a reason why so many people, I don't know, enjoyed maybe like Elden Ring.
Mm,
There's a story to it. It tells a story. There's a narrative. You can kind of, but at the same time, you're free to go where you want to go and do what you want to do. And I think they struck that middle ground pretty well. They did, I mean, and FromSoft. And that's hard to do these days. I think the last time I played a game where I kind of did that was Tom Clancy's Breakpoint. Do you guys remember that? Ghost Recon Breakpoint.
wow.
And I think Wildlands was pretty similar too. And it kind of felt like you could go where you want to go, you could do what you want to do, and there's a main storyline you can follow
Mm,
that tells a pretty decent story, And yeah,
yeah.
so that's kind of where like you said, that's rare. That was 6 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. And even in an
And I
open
just
world, if you can tell a good story, it comes
yeah,
off a lot better than a lot of the games we're getting nowadays.
yeah, for sure, for
What
sure.
is it? Freaking Death Stranding 2, I think, is a really good example of that. It's like a huge open world game, but I think most people are sticking to a pretty definitive path. It's just like you have the world around you that you can go see, but it's more just like a realistic backdrop than something they
Yeah.
expect you to go find for objectives. I actually don't know. I haven't played that game. I've only watched
I
it.
haven't played it either. It's interesting because like I said, it's very hard to strike that middle ground that players where it's like you can make these players happy that just want an on rails game, and then you can make these players happy who want that total open world kind of sandboxy feel in their single player game. It's
Yeah.
very hard to do that, and there's a lot of games that don't do a very good job of that, and it's way too sandboxy so the player just feels lost, or it's way too on rails so a lot of those players who want a little more freedom kind of go, well, that game was good for 20 hours of gameplay.
Hmm.
And I think that's an important thing to strike between the two. And yeah,
It's like the race to make a good immersive sim. Really.
yeah, kind of.
All hail Deus Ex.
Oh, the third one never came out.
Good
All
lord.
because Eidos Montreal got repurposed to make a Marvel game, I think.
No, didn't they make Forsaken?
I don't remember. They got pulled off of the third. Like there was Human Revolution and then Mankind Divided.
Yeah.
And Mankind Divided, if this is spoilers to you, then touch grass. But Mankind Divided ended on a dumb boss fight, which is not how Deus Ex games end ever. I mean, that's not no Deus Ex game has ended like that. They always end with this giant world-changing decision, right? And so then you're like, oh, there's going to be a third one that's going to kind of kick off here. And then the end of the third one will be the end of the awesome trilogy. And then Eidos Montreal got repurposed to whatever other game it was. I can't remember. Because it was
Yeah.
because they were like, we think we can make more money in this direction. It was like, why don't you just do
Of
what people like?
course. And then
Make a good game.
I think the IP got sold off to Embracer Group. And so they were
Yeah, and then
like,
they
everybody's like, oh,
just
maybe
this
they'll make
last
a game.
year.
And then Embracer Group just cut everybody.
Yep.
Which is
Yep. I
topical
think that was
because,
this last year.
yeah, that was last year, along with Microsoft last year, along with Microsoft 2 days ago, yesterday. It was just,
Yeah.
dude, man,
True.
the games industry is such a freaking bloodbath. It's so sad.
It is. I was gonna say it's been pretty cutthroat in the gaming industry for like 2 years, kind of a year
I'd
and a
say
half, maybe.
since the pandemic. I mean, since the big bump after the
That hasn't
pandemic, at
helped.
least.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's been interesting. I would say too, like this goes for like I work in IT, right? So
Mhm.
um work from home has created a situation where it's like, hey, you can get a job anywhere, but so can anyone else. And that's at first you're like, oh, that's great. Like I could have a job at a place that's in Kentucky or wherever, right? Anywhere in the world, really, and work from where I am. But then you realize, like, oh, that opens the world, like that opens this same company up to anyone else in the world. So I have to be good at what I do, and that's kind of scary. And I think
Not
the
even
gaming
you have to
industry
be.
is,
I mean, it's
yeah,
not even
you
you
have
have
to
to
be the
be good
best.
at what you do. The company you work for also has to think that you're worth the value to not
Yeah,
outsource. Like
yeah, exactly.
screw your merit. That's
Yeah,
we're getting so far off track.
yeah. The chat just talked about Titanfall 3, and I want to cry a little bit.
Yeah, I
Thanks a lot,
saw that.
Maverick.
I tried to turn away. I shield myself from reminders. Yeah, there's a lot of it's a big game graveyard, but luckily Star Citizen continues. I actually really appreciate seeing. I mean, some of the games like so Perfect Dark Zero was a project that had an entire studio formed for it at Microsoft. The initiative formed in 2018, I want to say, to create Perfect Dark. Not a single piece of gameplay to show for it. They gave us a trailer. I think they gave us a teaser trailer and then like a gameplay trailer that was basically a cinematic. And we got nothing out of that. They closed the studio 2 days ago, fired all the
Ugh.
people. Just crazy. And then there's another
Yep.
one that it was supposed to be, I think, an MMO, and it had been in production, or at least it had been an idea, including pre-production, for 10 years.
Yep.
And it's been dropped, canceled, nothing to show for it. And I'm just like, dude, how grateful am I? Okay, I know I have a lot of problems with what Star Citizen does at times, but how grateful am I for a game
Wait,
that
wait,
not
wait. You're gonna
only
get some comments in the. You're gonna get some
oh,
YouTube comments for
I'm gonna
whatever you're
get
about to say.
comments, guys. I understand, dude. I get it's one
Your
week or
Twitter
the
feed
next.
is so unhinged with the comments that people live on your videos. Stop being weird.
I'm the
Not
weird one,
you,
man.
the
I'm the weird one.
commenters.
No, I'm genuinely, I'm just so freaking grateful of all things that not only have we had communication on this whole time to some extent, it's lacked at times. Don't get me wrong, but we've also been able to freaking play something. It's not been playable, but we've been able to load into it. And like, there's just so many games that I'm following, and I'm like, what if I could play that right now, 5 years before it
Mm.
comes out? Like, and we could communicate with the developer on that. How would that change the abilities for that game to come out? Perfect Dark would have come out if it was open development in some way.
Yeah, it's a tightrope to walk. Um, and I don't envy CIG's position often because of that open development is so like you open yourself up so heavily to the player base's criticism and the player base's frustration and et cetera, et cetera. Like I say this pretty frequently. I sort of miss the days like when I was younger and a video game company would make a game. I didn't know their name. A game would come out and it was done and I would play it and it was either good or I didn't like it, you know?
Yeah, the
And I
2000s,
kind of miss those days. I mean, I know it's not as
fresh.
feasible these days as it used to be, and there's all sorts of other things in the way. I get that. But I do kind of miss those days pretty frequently where it was like, hey, there's, PC Gamer magazine said there's a new video game coming out and it's this and it does this and, I think the last game I played that where that happened was ironically like Deus Ex Human Revolution. Where to me, Eidos Montreal was at the time, I think I was in college, not as well known in my brain. It was just kind of like, oh, there's a new Deus Ex game that came out. Cool, And then I just played it. And I kind of miss those days. But Star
I'm not
Citizen
gonna
isn't
lie.
that.
Some of that does sound like just getting to be younger and not know these companies like we do now.
Sort of, yeah. Um, but there's also so much hype generated about every game, like every news outlet you can think of. You know, you see, it's like kind of like how it's the same to me. It feels kind of the same as like when a movie's coming out. and the trailers they put out essentially give away the plot of the entire movie. I actively try to avoid movie trailers of movies that I want to see because it seems like, oh, I've watched 2/3 of the movie if I watch all the
Yeah,
trailers.
yeah.
But I understand the plot, and it's like I don't want to understand the plot. I want to watch it in the theater and
I've been
understand it there.
enjoying movies more lately
Yeah,
if I go into them blind. You're absolutely right.
yeah. There's something about being a little bit surprised when something comes to you, that there's a little bit of wonder to me that gets a little bit lost in the age of information, where
Yeah.
you can look up everything. You could look up spoilers of any movie you want within seconds of its release, probably before. And I've kind of been doing the same thing with PTU and Star Citizen. There's been so many PTUs this year, which, again, not an awful thing, but it feels like if I play the PTU for that like 3-week period that it's open, it comes out and it's like, okay, now the thing that I've been doing for the last 3 weeks is in live,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
got to play the buggiest version of it for the
Yeah.
last 3 weeks.
It's weird.
So
It's weird with it being I actually like the idea of them having a constantly running experimental branch like that. The method that I know outside of CIG is what Coffee Stain did with Satisfactory. And so they would have an experimental build where they'd have the new stuff and then a
Yep.
live build that's kind of stable. I would love that with this game, but I do sympathize with you there. Like, I don't know which one to play exactly. I'm like, I do want
Yeah.
to see the new stuff, but I also want to progress and actually save my progress.
yeah. By the way, Satisfactory is a great game,
Wonderful.
especially for folks with OCD, or maybe not for folks with OCD, depending on how your OCD manifests. If everything
If you're
has to be
never,
perfect, the game might frustrate you. But also, if you like making things perfect, then the game, you'll love it.
yeah, like if you like things to be perfect, you'll never be without gameplay in Satisfactory. Just keep going.
That's true. That is very true. That is very true.
Um,
Anyway, not to say that we tend to do this, Tomato. We got a little off topic.
I mean, as friends do, conversations will happen. But I mean, it's it's kind of on topic, right? We talked about games and stuff.
That's
Let's
true.
talk about Star Citizen though. How's it been? How's like talking about PTU and live 4 point? Let's say it's starting from like 4.1.1. I feel like it's when the year got real. We had Hathor,
Hmm.
Stormbreaker. We're getting like a couple other interesting bits of content here and there, updates to mining, Atlas Geo, all these things. How has
Yeah.
the year been treating you in terms of gameplay?
Well, player bounties are back, so that's been helpful. They don't always work, and VoIP is kind of, like it always is. So there's no shortage of places to go, things to do, but also like Hathor is fun for. I mean, people still do Hathor from time to time,
Mhm.
just like, but that's kind of been I don't know if concern's the right word, or maybe not really frustration, because I'm not frustrated about content. Why would you be? But you have this thought process of like, okay, Hathor comes out, it's mostly working. There's these things that are broken. Some things are frustrating to players. CIG works to fix it. And kind of by the time they fixed Hathor, where it's like, okay, now it's really working, that was right just as players kind of like, not the whole community, but the community's interest in it sort of started to dive,
Mhm.
because you can only play it so many times. So you're like, all right, I've done the Hathor thing like 10 times, right? I've got everything. I've done everything. Now it's just kind of going through the motions. And that's an interesting situation for CIG to be in. And the CZs, the contested zones, when they came out, players really enjoyed those for a long time, and they have been super broken in a lot of ways. They're pretty good, last I heard, and player interest is kind of at the quote unquote all time low for CZs. Not that players don't do them, especially for the rewards and the ships, but there's kind of that process of like, new thing is cool, players like to do it, it's really buggy, it gets less buggy as players do it less at the same
Right.
time. And that's
Yeah.
like, man, it would be nice if it was as good as it could be while the most players were playing it, and that's a really hard thing to do. So
I've got a question for you about the Hathor location.
Okay.
You mentioned like you do it a lot of times. and it gets boring over time. Would
I
you
don't know if
say
boring is
that
the right
there's
word, but maybe it gets less
it's
fresh, you know?
monotonous?
Yeah.
Do you think that there are obvious ways that these areas will always be fresh to players in the long run?
It'll be tough. I mean, without major gameplay changes, like, I mean, you could do like different rewards, maybe. It's hard to do that
Well,
with Hathor because the reward is the mining, right?
if you take away, let me say it this way. If you take away the actual Hathor part of it, like the aligning the dishes, firing the laser, doing the mining, do you think there are things they could do to these locations to make them interesting outside of just going for that activity?
I think loot is a way, you know, like vary the loot a little bit. You could have events of some sort uh, where there's special enemies or special loot or something at those locations to kind of keep people coming back. It's really hard because then you start to run into that, you know, the S word, sandbox, and they want to tell a story with these locations. So do you just tell the story and then let players sandbox it? Maybe. Um, and I don't know if it's all about, somebody mentioned incentive to keep running Hathor locations. I think incentive is a difficult road to walk as a developer, because if everything that you do is about incentivizing players to get there, eventually for every single player, that incentive runs out.
Yeah.
If there's a cool set of gear, the player eventually gets it. If there's a cool gun, the player eventually gets it. If there's a cool, like a certain amount of minables, the player eventually gets that and loses that incentive. And you have to keep making more if you want that player to come back. So the real question to me is, how do you easily make tweaks to a location like Hathor to keep a player who's been there 10, 15 times and done what they want to do there to be like, I'm going to go back. You know, I want to check out this thing, whatever it might be. And is that just loot? Is that just, you know, fresh minables? Is that just fresh enemies? To me, I almost feel like it's a control thing. Maybe like an idea. It's just, I mean, this is out there, right? Because a little bit, put on your copium masks, everybody. But
We love some speculation.
yeah, a little bit of speculation and tentative speculation, I think, in this year is the word. But so, like, control, reputation, like if you can somehow dig the claws of the game into those locations. So like reputation, control, security response, maybe even the crime and punishment system, the narrative. If you can somehow dig the game into those locations and like intertwine those things, then I think you start to create something that players want to keep coming back for. Like the Hathor location on Daymar Atritus, right? Let's just say that one is under control by Ninetales, right? The next week it might be under control by, you know, headhunters or somebody who has come in and swept through it and take control. That means all new enemies. That means different loot, right? That means maybe a different narrative that it tells, and you get to try to take that location either for yourself or, you know, Crusader Security or whoever, right? Like tell that story in the game, and then I think players will want to keep coming back. You know, that's one of the reasons why a game like PlanetSide 2, you know, the game is PlanetSide 2 stale, but then again, it came out in like 2012. So,
Yeah,
and the fact
it's
that
old.
it's still going is pretty good. 13 years. And I think the reason that it happens, despite being a constant war where things go back and forth, is simply because things go back and forth. That control aspect of the game is what keeps the dedicated players playing it. The veterans want to keep playing PlanetSide 2 because A, there's not really anything like it for them. And B, they get to keep pushing their own narrative of control and, you know, bases and things like that, and try to do that as best they can, and it keeps them coming back. And every major update of a game like PlanetSide 2, where they've changed how control works, the lattice system, or, and for those of you who know what I'm talking about, or the continent locking. Once you could lock a continent, PlanetSide 2 got enough continents that you could take one completely over and lock it for a period of time and get yourself a benefit. That was a huge update, and that was years ago. But it created a thing where players have this goal, right? And it's a control-based goal. And if you give somebody a control-based goal, as an example, if you can do that with a place like Hathor, players will want to keep coming back, I think.
Are you
Especially if there's any little benefit to it, but just for the sake of doing it, players, I think, will come back.
are you speaking about this from the perspective of like an org member, somebody who has an org who would do this, or is this just more as an idea?
Yeah, you could do it as an org thing. CIG talked about that at SitCon with those planetary shield bases, I think they call it.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of somebody in the chat or in the YouTube comments will know, but it's fuzzy for me. So they talked about that a little bit, and that interested me because of that control. Yeah, the shield warfare thing. That control aspect of it, where it's like a group of people, a faction, or an org, however CIG does that, works together to take over a location and own that location and reap its benefits for that period of time. And then, of course, maybe it becomes more and more difficult to do that over time, and it's time gated, etc. But if CIG can create that kind of stuff, and I think it's probably just hard for them to do within the current games.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not in Stanton.
Yeah, right. Reputation means very little at the moment,
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I think that's to answer the original question. I think the way you keep players coming back, in my opinion, is create a deeper meaning for them coming back than just loot and guns and gear and stuff that they will eventually fill up on. If you can control that kind of stuff. Well, the biggest thing you see orgs doing at places like Jumptown is they want to control it and reap the benefits. They want to tell that story for their org or their group or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's why Jumptown was so fun, I think, is because people could go there, maybe sneak some drugs out, whatever it might be, but they could control the area. They would control the airspace. They would get on the ground. They would assault the facility. They would control it. They would get some drugs out, tell that story, and then be done with their gameplay or whatever. Same thing with the Capture the Idris thing. There was orgs that, it was a contest to see who could keep the Idris the longest, and that was pretty cool. So anyway, that's the long version.
I think it's a good point. I've looked at loot as a great way to keep people coming back, but it would be nice if there was, they used to talk about the probability volumes that would occur around space stations, where the closer you got to that space station, the more likely you'd see like a certain faction.
Yeah, kind of.
Like security, cargo haulers, or pirate. It'd be nice if they had that around ground locations, and then, like you said, that could switch based on the faction that has control of that area. I'm also wondering, as you say, they're looking to tell a story with these locations. Do they want to make these locations that everybody maybe or 50% of the community sees once or twice and moves on, and it's just like a constant flow of people coming through? Because that is what it seems like the location would be right now, right? Telling the story, giving you a chance to go see it, whether you join now or in 4 years, as opposed to a place where maybe you want to return to 12 months from now. Because if they have, like, if it's more of the former, they would need more of those like type of locations. If it's more of the latter, then you can definitely do more with less.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with doing anything but what they're doing, and I think the word theme park comes to mind, because Hathor location right now is a bit of a theme park ride. You can only ride the roller coaster so many times until you're just riding to ride it. It loses its wonder after a bit, and that's difficult for any developer to like. Replayability is, a huge thing for developers. They really want you to replay their game, ideally. And so with the game mechanics that we have, with like the lack of reputation meaning much, the lack of control, the lack of, malleability with like right now, I think all of the enemies at the Hathor locations, are they all Nine Tails? I can't remember. They're whatever faction they are, right?
I think so.
All those enemies are the same faction, and that doesn't change. And if CIG had the mechanics in, or the ability to, without their effort, have those change based on whatever factors they want, then I think players would do that all the time. You'd have instant higher replayability. You'd have players that like headhunters that would get a group together and be like, hey, we're going to take over this Hathor location for the headhunters. However that happens.
Well, yeah, but then does that not ruin the story for the people who are coming for like the set in stone story aspect?
I don't know. I don't think it ruins it any more than any group of players coming in and killing everybody.
Yeah.
Because like the control thing could be on top of the story, right? You can still fire the laser, you can still do the entire Hathor thing, no matter what enemies are there.
Mhm.
Because if it's Ninetales and I don't care about who controls it, I just kill them. And if it's headhunters and I don't care about the story, or I don't care about who controls it, then I just kill them and do the Hathor laser task.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants to have one or the other control it, however CIG would do that, then they can.
These
But anyway,
these locations, the way that they're being added, um, I'm talking about Hathor, Stormbreaker, even contested zones. Do these feel similar to what they were doing in the 3.x era of updates, or does it feel like a different set of additions?
you mean with like the events?
I mean, yeah, back then they were doing, I guess, I don't know if anything would
Like
be really
Xenothreat?
comparable. Xenothreat, yeah.
Yeah.
Siege of Orson.
No, I think they're making them more. I think they're making them a little more sandboxy. CIG has this gigantic problem they have to deal with, where every new event or thing they make relies on what I call single dependencies, like a key card. That if that key card stops existing or doesn't work, or the key card printer doesn't work, the whole thing stops working. Siege of Orison was a really bad culprit of this. If one bad guy spawned in the ground, the whole mission was done. Or or the IFF things that you had to like push the button on to activate them or deactivate them. If those didn't exist, then the whole thing was just scrubbed for the whole server. And CIG has had a huge problem with making events that rely on those things that tend to break in poor server environments.
Yeah, you're right about
and
that.
I've been kind of railing against it. It's like, how do you get around that? Like, you want a player to do a thing, so you got to put a plot MacGuffin in, which is a key card or whatever. You just have to make sure that key card thing works, which, to be fair, they've been doing a lot better job with, I think. With like the Hathor locations and even the CZs, the contested zones, to a certain degree. So I don't think it feels quite the same. I think they're giving you more not paths isn't the right word, but they're giving you a little bit more of a sandboxy feel to the location. Like at the Hathor locations, there's a bunch of buildings, and you can start in any building you want and just make your way to all the different buildings in any order. So, which is nice. It kind of feels like you can go in as a group and be like, I'm going over there. Well, I'm going over there. Well, I'm going over there. And that allows your group to do things quicker, for instance, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Even with like Siege of Orison, it was supposed to be like platform 1, platform 2, platform 3, etc. And of course, you had players undermining that through various methods where they would get into like the last platform right away and kill the boss and blah, 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 blah. But I think that CIG took notes from that, and they understand like, hey, players are going to want to do things in a wide to narrow fashion, rather than a travel down the road we want them to travel down. They want a playground, and they can find the toys at their leisure or to their benefit and finish it quicker or shorter or whatever. And I think that creates a level of competition. I think that creates a level of mystery. So I think that they're different than they used to be. It's still the same concept of quote unquote a little bit of a theme park ride. So that can get old. But also, I think that they've been doing a better job at doing what they can with what they have,
Okay. Are these additions feeling more like a more finished game, an early access game, or is it still feeling like alpha implementations?
I've been saying for about three years maybe 4, that Star Citizen is just an early access game in every single way that matters to players. The only reason it's an alpha is because people call it an alpha, in my opinion. Um, the fact that you can play it, the fact that the developers have open development, the fact that you can actually buy the game um, and load in with a game package that you purchased, the fact that things get buggy and then they get better, the fact that there is a narrative that's being told, like a story that's being told that will stay in the lore of Star Citizen forever. All of that is early access game stuff. You know, DayZ was early access for years and years and years, and it was the same thing. You could play the game with whatever bugs were in it. The developers were relatively open about their development. They kept making the game, and I think it's gotten to a pretty good state over time. But I see Star Citizen in exactly the same way. I think the only reason that people call it an alpha is because CIG has called it an alpha so long.
Except not anymore. They're
Except
subtly
not
not.
anymore. That's
Yeah.
right. Which I think that's a good move on CIG's part. I think that they should just own what the game is and has been for a while.
Mhm.
And I think
You
that
know what?
it leads to, because there's so much bad press for CIG, in my opinion, that you see these, oh, this alpha, this alpha, this alpha, this alpha. And I think you have to break, like, if you want to break out of that narrative, you have to break that narrative. It has to start from within. Stop calling it, like, in my opinion, CIG should have a blanket, like, hey, we're not calling it an alpha anymore. We're
Yeah.
just calling it an early access game, because that's what it is.
It would have been interesting if they decided to switch over to, instead of saying Star Citizen Alpha 4.0, they said Star Citizen 0.4, maybe. And just eventually, whenever they needed to, jumped to Star Citizen 1.0 and drop the alpha moniker. Because I know I said everybody to that they're not calling it an alpha anymore. I say that because on their front page, they changed a descriptor from alpha to early access. They still do call the
Yeah.
patches alpha patches.
Yeah.
But what is it being more in an early access situation? What does that even change for you versus an alpha?
I think it's just an honesty with yourself kind of thing. I mean, just for me, there's kind of like an air of, we understand our identity, and that's what we're going to make, you know? I think for me, I've been saying this for a while too, is like, it's kind of a bummer when incidentally, not necessarily like on purpose or whatever, but like incidentally, CIG tends to hide behind the alpha title when things are going really poorly. But when things are going really well and it's fun, all of a sudden it's a video game. You know, go play our playable video game when everything's working and everything's cool. But when things stop working and things are really broken, well, don't forget, it's an alpha. And it's like, well, you guys can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, at a certain point, the players kind of see that, you know? And so for me, I think the early access title, calling yourself an early access game, I think you just live in the space you're in, you know? Because players kind of understand early access a little bit better than they understand, well, alpha, but it's playable, but I want it to work, but you say that you're working on playability, but it's still an alpha, and it kind of feels like you're hiding behind the alpha name. If you just call it early access, everybody kind of understands, yeah, early access games are buggy. Like, the average player gets that, because 60% of games come out in early access these days anyway.
Is it just 60?
Hmm.
I
Well, I
hear
don't know.
what you're saying, and I do agree based on how they sell it. Fun fact, I think 3.24 is the last trailer they put out that actually says playable now at the end. They stopped doing that.
Really?
Yeah, I believe. I was looking for it for a video recently, and I was like, why
You
can't
can
I
blame
find
Salty Mike for this. You can do.
the the actual playability of it is something that they're clearly trying to message on. They're putting out narrative trailers for every patch instead of like feature lists like they used to. So yeah, I from that angle, it definitely feels early access. But man, one of the wildest things about being neck deep in Star Citizen sludge every single day, and I say sludge with the most respect. It's fun sludge, but like, is seeing how pervasive it is that people think that whatever is happening in the game is permanent, or it's just like it's how it's meant to be. Like the fact that you can just attack someone instant and kill them and then go on your merry way with a little crime stat is like the full game design plan for the game. And I think that being calling yourself early access, I would expect gives people the sense that that is true, that it is kind of in this state where things aren't going to drastically change. Whereas with alpha, I would at least expect people could come in and be like, oh, well, they full on don't even have mechanics in the game. Like reputation doesn't even work yet. But I realize the name doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah, I
matter
mean,
either
at a
way.
certain point, it is just kind of a name, right?
Yeah.
I think for maybe it's because I'm used to, I don't know, the way I'm used to things. But yeah, I see what you're saying there too. Of like, it may give an impression that like the things we've developed are how things are always going to be. Um, like the way that they've developed bounty hunting, right? Player bounty hunting. If you
Or
told
the
a new player
inventory.
like this is how it works and the game is early access, they'll go, "Oh, this is how it's going to be forever." This is
Right.
this is the thing they've put in and it's always going to be that way. Now, I think it was like uh Satisfactory a little bit, maybe Subnautica early on, DayZ. They have made some pretty big changes to their games, DayZ for sure, of like how for like if DayZ for instance like how the zombies work, right? While they were in early access, there were some huge changes to the core game that was like we put this in, and then like a year later we decided we want to do something totally different, and the game was in early access the entire time,
Hmm.
and they've made those big changes. But yeah, I do see what you're saying, where it's like, oh, you're developing this game, okay, so this is how this is going to work, and you have to kind of explain to those players like, well, no, they're going to totally revamp that.
Yeah. And like it's not a
So yeah, I get it.
probably not a big problem to CIG. Like they get a lot of complaints and stuff in their direction, but they've
Yeah,
likely gotten good at kind of shuffling through that. I just for
something
the
tells me they have a
overall,
decently thick skin. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like expectations wise, how many people are going to play this game and like how many people are going to get completely thrown for a loop when engineering comes in?
Yeah, that'll be interesting too. And I mean, a lot of that depends on how CIG does it.
Yeah.
How deep is it? How effective is it? Like, how much does it affect the world around you and the ships you're flying and stuff like that?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. Like, will it push people to single seat fighters? There's a whole podcast about that, I'm sure. So we'll leave it there.
uh, let's talk about let's talk more about the sandbox activities and kind of how they
Mm.
factor into this state of the game at the moment. Um, the storm, what is it? Stormbreaker, Storm Crusher, Stormbreaker,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
Stormbreaker.
the Stormbreaker activity and the ASD facilities along with it. Do those feel like they have more staying power than Hathor to you?
No, personally, I killed the worm once, and the my org is not super into collecting the teeth and stuff. For aside from maybe getting some Wicklow stuff, some of the guys are. But to me, the exclusiveness of the area, it feels so menial getting to the area. You know what I mean? Um, like you land at a location, you take the tram, you get off the tram, and now you're there, right? You're in the space. You can't really come and go at your lead. I mean, you can get on the tram, but you know what I mean. You can't really just get in a ship and fly off like you can with Hathor. Um, and that to me, I think players will tire of that a little bit faster. Uh, they'll do it with their group, and they'll go, okay, I've experienced that, and then they'll move on. And again, I mean, it comes down to CIG creating unique rewards for that location. I don't mean rewards as in loot. I mean rewards as in like things that make your dopamine activate.
Yeah.
If you can keep players wanting to come back, you can, but it's a lot harder for CIG to make players want to come back to that location because that location is so specific to one thing, right? The thing you do at that location is kill the worm, right? Or fight the worm.
Well, okay.
And
So
yeah,
what what about other pyro outposts? You know, like what do you go to those outposts for?
Nothing. The occasional helmet, maybe. I don't know. Backpack if I don't have one.
He's got jokes.
And that's
No,
that's
I
a tough
mean,
thing too, is because CIG creates a mission that takes you to a location, and then you go there and you do that thing, and you go, oh, okay, another location. You know, they're dotted all over the place,
mhm.
and I think there's a lot of pride that somebody at CIG has in. I made this location and it looks really cool. Like in Pyro, I can't remember the location's name, but there's a couple locations where that's a giant mining pit right next to the location.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, super cool. You can't mine there. It's a giant mining hole. Anyway,
So do you think
sorry.
it'd be better though if they added that later, or if they added it now and then allowed us to mine later?
I've thought that as long as for a long time, I've kind of thought like, okay, Shubin Mining Facility SCD1 on Daymar, called mining. It's right there in the name. There's no better mining around that location than anywhere
Yeah,
else
that
on
is
Daymar. In
it's
fact,
like
it's worse
mocking
because
us.
you get attacked there more often. And people always said, don't mine around the mining locations. What? Excuse me? You
Well,
know,
that's
it's
their
like,
mining location. You got to find your
well,
own.
that's the thing. Yeah, right. Salt mining. And I get that, like, I understand that from just you're playing a video game that's multiplayer. If you want to do a thing and not get attacked, you avoid the people that can attack you. Totally get that. But I think CIG went about that in a weird way, because it's like, okay, there's a mining location, or there's Kudra ore mining, which is a gigantic hole that apparently they dug in the surface of Daymar. There's very little to mine down there. I mean, there's hand minables, but there's this giant
Which
hole that somebody was interested enough to dig. And you go in
I,
there, and it's like the thing that gets used for most often is somebody with a crime stat goes back in there and lures people in to have a good fight. You know, that's not what it's there for.
can I just point out that we're out here firing orbital lasers at the crust of Daymar and making like a 10-foot hole every time, and they were able to do Kudra ore, which is like at least 40 meters wide and like half a kilometer deep. What did they use to make that thing, man?
It has big vibes of Iron Man when he's like, Tony Stark built this in a cave
With a
with a box of scraps.
God, I love Jeff Bridges. Just some of the best deliveries of lines in all of Hollywood.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
like
that's a weird
8 years ago, CIG built this on Daymar.
Yeah, but now we get
But yeah, I know what you
special
mean.
minerals from the new one.
Yeah. Well, I understand it from a gameplay. They don't want like a bunch of big vehicles to be flying in there necessarily, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, which, okay, sure.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it all
gigantic
makes sense
lasers should make
gameplay-wise.
a bigger hole. I've been thinking that for a while. It's like, why don't you take the Kudra ore hole and its cave system, right? And just take that and put it over here, and then put a big cap on it, you know?
Yeah,
I think
Really,
that'd be
though.
cool. But they went the direction they went, so.
but these locations, my original question about like what we do at other locations is like, well, what if they just put that stuff at these locations as well? It's like what was mentioned in chat. They could use these mercenary missions. They could send you these locations for mercenary missions, and then maybe you're a repeat player. But imagine all of the thousands of new players that might come to these locations for a random mission and just get a little curious, and like every once in a
Yeah.
while they show up at this place and it's like, this is a bit different from the other outposts. Maybe I'll look around a bit more, and they kind of get sucked into it. Do you think that that's a
Yeah.
realistic path forward for these places?
I think it can be. I think, part of the wonder of being a new player is coming across things. Part of the wonder of being a new player in any video game, a good example again, I think, is like Elden Ring, right? Or Skyrim. Let's do Skyrim.
Okay,
You go to a
going
place
back.
to do a mission, and on the way there, or a quest, and on the way there, you come across a cave, and you're like, oh, there's a goblin outside of this cave guarding it, or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I go in? And then it starts a whole side quest because you find a special item at the bottom of the cave. No hand has touched the beacon, or whatever. And somebody's laughing right now. I hope somebody's laughing right now.
Come on, somebody, please.
Yes. And then it starts a whole side thing that you get distracted with. Skyrim is an expert game at that. Like, we talk a lot of crap about Bethesda and, how they, their games tend to be broken and the community fixes them. They gave us the baseline for one of the best video game franchises of all time. Give them some credit. And it's the way that they made that game and the way that it like sucks you into other locations. It's hard to follow the main quest line, and that's so special in a video game because you go to something for one thing, like a mission, or like, hey, there's a place called Kudra Ore Mining. I'm gonna go there and do a little bit of mining, see what's going on there. And
Mhm.
then it sucks you into other things on the way there, or when you get there, you find something that's like, oh, this is a cool thing. Like maybe I'll check this out. And right now, I don't think Star Citizen does a very good job of that. When you go to a facility, like if I go to a facility in Pyro, I go there for a mission, I might not even leave my ship. And if I do leave my ship, I just shoot bad guys. And if I come across a trade terminal, maybe, right? But it's like those places are so big that it's like you could have a gigantic sign over one of the buildings that says trade in neon letters. And I feel like that is the only way that players at those locations are going to get sucked into, oh, I can trade here. Cool. I'll fill my Cutlass Black up with whatever, and maybe try to make a profit on it or something. And the game just doesn't do a great job of that at those locations, and I think it could.
Yeah. The potential is certainly there for, I mean, it's huge with a game like Star Citizen. If they could
Mm-hmm.
actually, the pyro locations would be great for this. They have these outposts that are like some 70 kilometers away. Being able to assign contracts to those locations or give you a tip, maybe like the bartender you met at the space station tells you to go visit one. And then you kind of see the other ground locations as you're flying in. That could be kind of the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah, for sure. It's I don't know. It's a hard thing. Um, it's a hard thing to navigate as a developer because it's like earlier we talked about, like you don't want to, if you put too much, if you put so much in that is going to change in the future, then you have to change it. It's your job to like, okay, now we got to change all those locations that we made all these, you know, plot lines for and things like that, or potential. And it's how do you give people, how do you fill that sandbox with so many toys without later being like, all right, I got to pick up all the toys because I got to change how it all works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a challenging scenario for CIG for sure. I don't think the answer is necessarily to do more of the events forever. Because what happens when all of Stanton, Pyro, and Nyx, right, are full of like places like Hathor? Is that all the game is just, I'm going to go on this theme park ride today. I'm going to go on this theme park ride today. And nobody wants Star Citizen to be a theme park. They want it to be an MMO, you know. And to be fair, MMOs have those same theme park mentalities of like, okay, we have a dungeon over here, and that's kind of a theme park ride. You go do that dungeon. But, it's up to CIG to figure that out in their game.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know how, I don't think I would have a problem if every location had its own story as long as you could still do other things. Because
Yeah.
if everywhere is special, nowhere is special, right? To quote
Yeah. Yeah, that's
a great man.
kind of, yeah, kind of. I think places can be special, but as long as they're different enough,
Well,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And it's like, do I get the same feeling doing Hathor as I do doing a contested zone or the worm thing? I don't know. That's up to each individual player, but it's up to CIG to
right,
try to make those experiences as unique as possible to make you feel different things when you go to a different place.
yeah.
I
My
think like when the worm comes out, the Apex worm, the Valakar, when that comes out as a world event, like you can just find them on Daymar. I think that'll have tons of staying power. You know what I mean? You can do it anywhere as long as you know there's a worm there.
I hope that's
And
how
I
it
think I
is.
think that creates a lot of cool gameplay. Rather than I have to go to this location, I have to travel all the way to Pyro, I have to do this, I have to get this key card, I have to go here, I have to do this. All of these single dependencies have to happen for me to see the worm. But if it's like I can fly across the surface of Daymar and find a little pile of mini Valakar and start killing them, and then the bigger ones will show up and I start killing them, and then I hear a ground rumbling and I start talking global chat like, holy crap, I got a worm, it's here. And you start making a party and you did it all yourself and you did it anywhere on Daymar that you wanted to, or whatever planet or moon. I think that creates a much cooler story
Yeah,
than the story is here. Like the book is on the shelf and I just have to read it versus I'm writing the book. You know what I mean? That's a totally different feeling.
not being location bound.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge
And
difference.
moving towards like a final game out of this alpha stage. I feel like that is important. Do you see any examples of that happening?
Any examples of what?
Just things that can occur regardless of location.
On a small scale, for sure. I mean, you come across like 50 quasi grazers just hanging out on hearse and it's little things, like that. It's like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. I just came across that.
Hmm.
Um, to me, like that's like one of the reasons why I like player bounty hunting. Player bounty hunting is you're doing the same thing, but it tells a different story most of the time. Sometimes a guy is trying to bedlog in his ship, so he travels to deep space, and it's a race to see if you can triangulate to his location before he can bedlog,
Hmm.
and that's just very cool, and VoIP tends to expand on those situations too, where it's like if VoIP works, of course.
Can't wait for that.
yesterday
It works.
yesterday I was playing and there was a guy in an Avenger Titan that just came across a location that I was at, and I just targeted him and kind of wing waggled him a little bit and came up to him. I was talking with him in VoIP, and I was like, "Can you hear me?" And he goes like this with his ship. So we were
Mhm.
talking, and then I was like, "So, are you like a new player? Like, do you have a new account?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, so you're just here hanging out?" He's like, "Yep." And then for whatever reason, I think he wanted to get out of his seat in the ship. But the Avenger Titan, for those of you who know, there's two ways to get out of your seat. You can either
Oh
the seat
no.
turns around and you get into the ship, or you get out of the ship. And I think he used the F interact and was like, "Oh, exit seat," but it was exit ship. And so I just watched him while his ship was hovering there get out of the cockpit and he just swan dived to the ground. And I was like, "What?"
It's
Like I
my
feel like I
people
just
call
watched
me.
something that I'm not supposed to watch.
World Star, dude.
And ragdolled all the way to the ground. Never talked to him again. But it was just those little situations where it was like, that situation may never happen to me again, And it's just so cool that I came across it, you
Mhm.
know. But yeah, if the game can tell stories like that without having you have to go to a certain location, do a certain thing, get a certain key card, hope that the game works the entire time, do this and this and this, I think then you start to create like that feeling of like a true sandbox MMO where you can do what you want, go where you want, and there's a good chance that you'll find something interesting to do or experience.
Would you say you're getting more player interactions since server meshing came with 4.0?
Yeah. Well, I see more players, but VoIP has been rough with server meshing. Uh, and global chat is busier than it's ever been. So as far as like shooting other players, yeah, and getting shot, absolutely. You got 600 players per server, and the hotspots in Star Citizen are still the hotspots. Surfing Station, Grim Hex, constantly people coming and going. If you guys want to see like just like Tomato, if you ever want B-roll of people coming and going from places, just hang around Grim Hex in EVA. Get your third camera out and just watch the hangars. People will just come and go constantly. It's
Thank you for
like
the
every
tip.
minute there's somebody coming and going. And Seraphim is similar to that too. I mean, there's a lot of places where it's like that. Or the jump gates. You could watch people jumping through the Stanton Gateway all day. It's every time I go there, there's somebody. Almost every time I go there, there's somebody
Yeah,
coming
it's
or
pretty
going,
cool.
which is really cool.
Can't wait until there's
Um,
NPC traffic, dude.
Yeah, that's cool. That is something that makes like a game like Elite Dangerous feel pretty alive. The way that the NPCs interact with you and treat you is pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you're friendly with a station or allied with a certain faction and you go to their station, they'll literally greet you as a friend. They'll be like, "Welcome back, Commander. How's it going?" They'll
Yeah.
be like, "We
Dude, I
got
can't
a
wait for
landing
that.
pad for you," and that's pretty cool. So hopefully Star Citizen goes in a direction like that too, where it creates more life. But anyway,
Little
yeah. To answer your question, yes. I
there
definitely
is
interact with more players.
that's good to hear. Unfortunately, they're all a lot of gun interactions. There was a little bit of good hope on the monthly report about that. The new mission they're working on is for us to escort ships to and from a quantum travel point and a hangar in a space station. And I feel like that's like one step out of three to make it so that NPCs are flying between space stations and stuff. So maybe they're actually on a path to make that happen. Like I have always wondered when the switch would be thrown and we could start seeing non-player ships flying around that aren't combat focused.
Yeah. It's really hard for CIG, I think, to create missions where they're at more than one location. I think the patrol missions, I think they're Foxwell,
Mhm.
where it has you patrol several locations is a start, because at least it tells a story that takes you to more than one place, which is cool. But the escort missions, I think that there's a lot of potential there for like this NPC is asking for an escort from Everest Harbor to Seraphim Station, right? He's got medical supplies on board or whatever. And your job is to, assuming they can get it working, right? Align with him and then group jump with that NPC from place to place. And other thing is cool, and CIG has to get it fixed, obviously, is the group quantum tunnel thing. You remember
Mhm.
when you used to have like a group of people and you'd have like 4 or 5 ships and you could all watch like you were all in the same quantum tunnel going the same speed?
Yeah.
So CIGs, let's say they got that working. You both get interdicted at the same time, right? And then that's such a cool, like, I've created a party with an NPC and it makes me feel like the game is so alive, you know? Um,
Yeah, that is
creating a party, you know what I mean? But like I'm
yeah.
grouped up with an NPC and we are experiencing the same things together and I'm taking him from one place to another. I think that's cool.
That is yeah, I was really hoping that's what these missions were gonna be. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk about, where was it? Had it oh,
I like that.
and
So to explain, as Tomato gave me a list of things we may talk about, and I don't know if we've hit any of them. I mean, we have,
folks,
but there's
that's
a
just
list
how a
here, and I'm
podcast
so
works.
lost at this point.
Yeah. You just gotta go and you gotta hit what you can. We got time that we
Yeah,
got and we go through
right,
what
true.
we
Yes,
yeah.
let's get on track. My fault. I get
No, that's
distracted
not
easy.
your fault. It's actually my fault, but I love
Right,
getting
it's
off
your
into
fault. How
tangents in
dare you?
conversation. Yeah. Shame on me. Ring the bell.
Yeah.
Ding ding ding. Let's talk about 4.3. This patch just got announced this week and it's got some interesting stuff in it. Looks like underground facilities are finally coming into the game, but they are including a couple different things, one of which is AI turrets, which are supposed to act as PvE deterrents to players that will be in different locations. Now, I'm guessing these are purpose built for the underground facilities right now, but do you think these could be part of a push to make security a thing in this game finally?
Well, security is a strong word. I think CIG's always had CIG's always had the ability to do it. You know, they could always put NPCs. They could give a turret an NPC AI, right, and just have it aim, and shoot.
Yeah, they could.
They've been able to do that for a long time. Do they have the locations that they want to do it in the ways that they want to do it? I don't know if the answer's been yes to that. Um, there's a decent example is like this thing called Spitfire turrets in PlanetSide 2. You can place down a turret and it will just shoot at enemies. Um, and it's essentially just like a placed AI that just aims and shoots. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's not as difficult as like making a moving, walking, cover finding, yelling AI, right?
Yeah.
So
God, they
they
yell so
definitely have
much.
the ability to do that. So assuming that it's just a PvE turret that is automated and isn't controlled by one of their next generation AI, that'll probably grab it backwards and then shoot themselves in the foot, literally.
That's
Uh,
next gen action.
uh, I think it's totally doable. Do I think it's a step towards security? Yeah. Do I think that that's maybe their goal? I don't know. I think they're just trying to give you different ways to experience PvE.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fair. It could kick two birds with one stone. I don't think the verb is kick, but I'm going to stick with that. Kick two birds.
Yeah, it's.
The other part
I
of
think it's. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The other part of it is
Kiss two birds with one stone.
kiss. That's it. Yes, it's kissing birds.
Yep.
Underground facilities are like a pretty old term, um, but it looks like they're coming in and being placed on every moon in Stanton. What's your first read on these?
That's interesting. I mean, I'll be honest. This is one thing that I haven't read into a whole lot yet. But I remember when I first heard about the underground facilities. For me, like when I was really like, oh, that's what that's going to be. Is like what do they call it? The Area 18 instanced areas that they talked
Hmm.
about at SitCon. And placing them on all the moons is kind of interesting. I think it gives it more accessibility for players. Obviously, I mean, going to moons is easy compared to going to planets. But also, it's kind of like, man, wouldn't it be nice if we had more reasons to go to cities besides I got to buy a module? Ugh, I guess I got to go to Area 18, you know?
Yeah. I just want to take a
I
ride on
was
the train.
walking through, yeah, I was walking through Orison or Lorville the other day, and I remember saying out loud to myself, like, won't it be cool someday when there's like auction houses, org banks, mission givers, more unique shops, all sorts of stuff at these locations, and you see players coming in? Because I was the only person at Orison, like this huge place, and I'm the only one there that I know of.
Free
There
reign,
might be
dude.
one other player somewhere else, but wouldn't it be cool someday when there's like 50 players, buzzing around Orison at any given time or
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah. And you could see ships
And
flying. Like I've
yeah,
I've always wanted to see ships flying through the city as you're like on the platforms because it's all these floating cities, and in a normal game that'd be a backdrop, but in this game people
yeah,
can
oh
fly through them.
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like Area 18, like Lorville, New Babbage.
Hmm.
How do you get players going there besides events, right? Like the IAE and stuff like that. Like, how do you get players to go to these places just because they want to do something there that's meaningful to them? And
Yeah.
I don't know if underground facilities are that. I think it might be like a little step, of like, oh, there's this cool thing that you and your friends can go do at Area 18, which is these underground facilities. Well, we can just do that at Daymar, you know? And that's not
I
a
think
bad thing. It's just it may be a little bit of a missed opportunity, depending on, I'm sure there's a lot of back end decisions and dependencies and things like that that we don't know about. But on the surface, it looks maybe like a missed opportunity.
the Area 18 ones are going to be much more complex, and this seems like maybe it
Probably.
would be a test version,
Yeah,
something
and this could
smaller.
be where they're, because I think of the Area 18 ones, they talked about there being many levels to them,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Where there's like you go and deeper and it gets more difficult and more difficult. Um, and this could be like, oh, there's one level, at each of these moons or whatever, right?
Hmm. They
Um,
don't. They
instead,
haven't
and
said
so
they're
it's a test for
instanced.
each level.
Do you think they are instanced?
Uh, they've really been pushing the instancing tech, kind of. I think there's been a lot of talk about the fact that the worm sites are going to be like the idea behind those is that the tram ride is going to instance you to your own location, right?
Hmm.
Which totally possible, right? Because that tram ride is long and it's surrounded by this giant storm that nobody else can get through.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
the
I
idea
mean,
is you're trying to tell a story of an event that the players can go and do, that's the perfect place to do an instance switch, right? Where players
you
won't
know,
feel it. Oh, you and five of your friends are in a party together and you're going to go to this location. You all go together on the same tram. You all get instanced into the same instance, and there you go.
I didn't. I didn't really think about it, but on the monthly report, it does say that they need dynamic server meshing for instancing, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. They already instanced our hangars.
Yeah, if they already instance our hangars, they don't need dynamic server. Well, okay, they need it for big instances
Yeah.
because a big instance is going to take its own DGS, its own dedicated game server.
Yeah.
Whereas the instance hangars, maybe one of the reasons why those are so janky is because they don't. You don't get it. You don't get your own DGS for your own hangar, right? No matter how big that hangar is. And so, yeah, maybe there's something to do with that, where they want dynamic server meshing for the sake of like, okay, this is a huge area where you and your friends are going to go, and it's instanced. So we need a server dedicated to that instance to run it.
Hmm. Yeah, and then the
That could
question
be.
comes up of, okay, well then, if they need dynamic server meshing for instancing, does that mean that they don't need it for this? Does it mean that this will not be instanced, or does it mean that they're expecting dynamic server meshing by 4.3?
Boy, that's the end of that sentence. I was just,
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I overdosed. Like I overdosed and came back to life in that time of just saying that.
uh huh. But yeah, so I don't know. These underground facilities probably aren't going to be that big. Maybe bigger than I think. But I mean, like if the what are they called? The places where there's so much potential for gameplay, but there isn't any on Hurston
Distribution centers.
and micro distribution centers. Thank you. I like how
Yeah.
I explained it that way, and everybody knew what I was talking about.
Yeah,
Uh,
we got you.
but yeah, the distribution centers, those are big. Those are big areas, and they're not instanced. They're not instanced and they don't require their own DGS. So they're pretty big. If the underground facilities are that size or smaller, I don't think CIG is going to, they may not instance them.
I
But they also
I
could,
do,
because if you go through a door like a hangar, right, it could be
yeah,
its own instance. And
an
maybe they're trying
elevator.
to test instancing of these underground facilities that they could stack at a place like Area 18. And so maybe they will be instanced. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I think that's what they're doing here. We will see. I'm also wondering
We'll
if
see.
these are going to attach to distribution centers because if you remember when they first introduced underground facilities, they introduced them as 3 different zones, and that first zone was actually the distribution center. They just didn't call it that until a couple years later. So I'm wondering if this is them kind of completing that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean that you see that through Star Citizen's development too. They'll take something like the hand mining tool or the hand tractor beam, and they use that to build the tech for bigger stuff like ship tractor beams.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like as they're done with the thing, they place it in and they make something playable there for something that's coming in the future that will expand it. And
Someday.
it is kind of odd. Like distribution centers don't seem to have a lot going. So that could definitely be a place where they go, okay, there's an underground facility underneath the distribution center. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hopefully someday.
Yeah.
In-game rewards have
Or,
become more of a
trade at the distribution center. Sorry. Just let us
distribute
play the
things.
game. Yeah. Go
In-game
on.
rewards have become more of a focus lately, especially with 4.2.1. We're seeing a lot of opportunities that are account bound. These tend to pop up more when it comes to actual events rather than the thing like the Hathor and or Stormbreaker. But
Yep.
they do kind of feel like real running game things, and they give that sense of early access as opposed to alpha. Do you think CIG is trying to make a very specific statement with these in-game rewards, or are they just trying to keep people coming back to play the game?
I think it's more the latter than the former. I think if they're making a statement with it and players are kind of getting the idea that like, oh yeah, this is a video game, you know what I mean? Then it's kind of it's a secondary effect. I think the primary effect is just we want to give players content. We want to give players reasons to come back here. We want to give them rewards for doing the things, with their friends or whatever, or completing things in a certain way. I think that's their goal. I don't think it's a whole lot deeper than that. It does, however, put pressure on them to stop things like cheating. Because if I can dupe a bunch of whatever, right? Let's say that there's Wicklow wants, 69,420 Karenite, right? For some reward that's going to be account bound on my account. And I could just dupe that. I've cheated to get something permanent, and CIG has to stop that.
Yeah,
That's
the
their job.
duping it's a bummer to see that coming up again.
Yeah.
You
So,
think we're going to get a economy reset soon?
I don't know. I mean, I'm pro wipe for the most part.
That's good. It's
Not all the
cleaner that
time.
way.
It's cleaner that way. It allows players to build. I think it lets players kind of tell a story. I understand the frustration with it for sure. Like you worked really hard to get a ship that you really like and set it up the way you want. And I feel the pain of it too. The account that I play the game on 95% of the time is an account that has an Aurora MR on it. So when a wipe happens, it hits me just as hard as it hits anybody else.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'll cause that. I think this was pretty short-lived. CIG actually hot fixed it out before 4.2.
Really? The duping
Yeah,
problem
there was a hot
taken care of?
fix. Well, the duping thing I think was fixed. There was a friend of mine who had tested several ways to do it, and actually he was a big part of the reporting process, I think. And he DM'd me the other day. He was like, whatever that hot fix was, he's like, I can't get the duping to work at the moment.
Good. That's good.
So I was like, that's cool. It's good when they fix stuff and just fix it quick-ish,
Yeah.
And it's possible that, CIG, they could probably, I mean, it's probably not that difficult to be like, hey, how many accounts just sold like 5,000
20 million, yeah.
hay tonight or whatever, And it's like, maybe they were duping it, possibly,
It's a chance.
And yeah, like I don't think rock mining is that popular. So there's a good chance that they could track some of that and maybe reset some of those UEC values or undo some of that stuff or even, suspend accounts or whatever they got to do.
Yeah.
With this particular one, because it was their reaction to this particular duping once it kind of gained popularity was, in my opinion, pretty quick.
I think that's telling because a lot of people posts will be like, "Oh, they don't pay attention to cheaters. This is getting out of hand." And I feel like part of handling cheating and hacking is like not acknowledging that you're doing it. You're just getting the people behind the scenes and not letting them know you're after them. But like when they come
It
out
was
with a
always
fix
weird
like
to be like, we
this,
understand that there are dupes and exploits happening. Okay, now fix them. And then like 2 weeks would go by. And
Well,
it's
yeah,
like this
so
one, it was like they understood it. They had their eyes on it. They figured out what was going on with it. They hot fixed it or whatever they did. And that all happened pretty quickly and pretty quietly. I think that's a big part of it.
yeah, I think that's a
Sorry to
good
interrupt,
sign
I
that they
interrupted.
are actually watching. No, no problem. It's good to know that they're paying attention to that stuff because I'm not gonna lie, I constantly I'll see. I mean, not constantly. Whenever this kind of stuff comes up, I'm like, oh boy, this is a complex game. How did they stay on top of this?
Yeah. Well, that's a challenge too, because like, when's the last time you figured out whether or not Ghost Hollow was working? It's like
It's not.
the game is getting big, man, and every patch trying to fix everything that breaks. That's a tall order, for a team that is, most of them are working on Squadron 42.
Yeah, that's what's killing
Um,
us. I
yeah.
I do hope that after Squadron is done, we don't see a big downsize at the company. But at the same time, uh, who knows how they'll be able to support themselves. I do hope that they can keep a lot of people on Star Citizen because it's a big game. It's going to take a lot to
Yeah, I
finish
mean,
out.
a lot of that, and this is, I mean, it's common knowledge for the most part, but like Squadron 42 needs to do pretty well, or at least sell pretty well, Um, CIG wants to do multiple chapters of Squadron 42. They want to keep going. And if they can build the game out and then make more chapters with the tech that it has and tell a new story and the game is good and people like it, they could create a great revenue stream of Squadron 42 chapters. They could make 5 chapters
Yeah.
if they keep being popular. And if players keep buying those chapters, and the game and it keeps telling a good story, then they have a great revenue stream and they don't have to sell ships quite as much.
God, I hope. I hope
And then it could
Squadron
be a
does well for them.
transition to what I think should happen very soon, a transition to make a good video game and sell cosmetics for said video game, because that works.
Radical.
Yeah, it's radical. I know it's a crazy idea, but
Let's talk about the inventory. I haven't seen it yet, but apparently they showed a concept for the inventory in Star Citizen Live. Kind of funny. They were working on that back in February, according to
Yeah.
the monthly reports. So that took a little while to reach us. It's unfortunate I hear that it's still in concept.
Yeah.
But what do you think of what we've seen?
First off, I'm gonna make you and Honey. I'm gonna make you guys edit something for the YouTube, and this isn't gonna happen, but it'll be funny because I'm gonna point at nothing. This is the new inventory UI. Okay. Just kidding.
It'll be. It'll be. It probably won't be.
Nothing I like making more work for the podcast host. Just saying. Now you got to go through production, add an image in. I'm kidding. But
We'll just put a link in the description, guys.
the new concept does look pretty cool. It reminds me of like those old concept drawings back when the game was still mostly like CryEngine or whatever. There was a lot of, like, you'd see like concept drawings, early art drawings and stuff. It really looks
Made to
like
look like
over
in-game UI.
stylized. Yeah. Like when it comes to the game, it probably won't look just like that. It won't be as like, I don't know what the word is.
Shiny.
Like it looks like it was made to show off,
Mm-hmm.
And when it
Everything's
comes to the
all
game,
lit up and stuff.
yeah, it probably won't be that way. But the general flow of it looks pretty good. I think for me, I see maybe a couple too many buttons, which people like buttons, but it's kind of like if you want to be quick with your looting and stuff, like, well, okay, so what has to happen is the entire inventory has to load. Okay, how do I describe this? Right now,
You can
when
just
you loot
stop
a backpack,
there. It has to load.
yeah. So like right now, when you open an inventory, the game goes, okay, I have to query the, the item database, and I have to get a list of everything that's in it, and then I have to load the images, and then I have to load the quantities, and it does those things. You could see it happening, right? Um, and if you like, okay, I switched to this other inventory. Okay, now that one has to load. Well, I got to switch back to the other inventory. Well, that one has to reload again, and it has
Yeah.
to query the, the back end every time. It has to be. I don't care what the inventory looks like. It has to be snappy. It's got to
Oh
be.
God, yeah,
It's got
dude.
to feel like it's finished. It's got to work. And so for me, like I care a little bit less about because it's it's concepty. It probably will change the look of it, so people are all excited about like, oh, look at all these icons and the font and the way that the UI
Weight,
is set up.
weight of the
Forget
font.
all
Yeah.
that. It has to work well. If it flows well and it flows smoothly and it works quickly, everybody's gonna love it.
Did you? A lot of people were wondering if they were even going to make another inventory or like what the heck was going on, because basically they canceled the localized sort of drawer inventory about this time last year with
The
324
drawer was something.
PTU. Yeah, so like they didn't say anything after that. They didn't tell anybody
Yeah.
anything until we got the monthly report in February, and now this. What did you think
Yeah.
their plan was? Like, where do you think they were going?
I don't know. To me, it was like the calling up stuff on the freight elevator where you're like, I need 5 magazines. Okay, call it up on the freight elevator, and then you have 5 magazines sitting there on the freight elevator. It's like, well, that's not sustainable. You're making a video game. So for me, I was like, I'm fine with the way it is. I'm fine with interacting with a terminal, and then it opens my inventory. And I'm just
Yeah.
standing there and looking at myself. That's fine. It plays good. It doesn't have to be this like not every single thing has to be a physicalized screen or a drawer or a freight elevator or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be that way. It's a
Yeah.
video game.
Dude, I think you're already calling for it to be in a physical location. Like just the fact that you have to go to the terminal is already a
Yeah, to terminals.
requirement. It's not
They did a good job, by the
also
way, of dotting those all over the place. So
Mhm.
kudos to them on that.
I do
But
hope they still do that. I've only seen like a glance at this concept. I haven't gotten to really look at it yet, but like it still looks like it is a third person camera, which I was hoping they wouldn't do. I was hoping that they would just show us the exact same screen, but on the terminal. Like it's an in game screen that's showing you yourself in real time. That
Well,
makes
again,
sense.
as long as it's snappy, as long as it works
Yeah.
well and it's
Yeah.
not reliant on how terminals work.
Can't
Like,
be
oh,
too
I'm messing
picky.
with my inventory, and like if you mess with your ASOP long enough, like you call enough ships up, you'll just get kicked off the ASOP terminal, even though you were clicking on it the entire time, because there's a timer that just kicks you off after like 30 seconds. And it's like, well, if the inventory terminal does that, then screw the inventory terminal. Just do what it
Mhm.
is already.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think the
But in this
terminals are
case,
gone.
like that concept image was the guy was facing towards nothing.
Mhm.
So assuming that was some kind of, I don't know if that was even a game build or if that was just made, that person didn't interact with anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Because there's nothing
assuming
in front of them.
it's telling.
So it
But
probably to me is just like, oh, they kind of just layered what it's going to look like over the player.
we'll see. We will see. I I don't know. As far as the way they've advertised the game, having a third person camera like that feels a little weird, but they might just find that that's the easiest way to do it, and so they do it. It's not going to ruin anything. It's just like one little change.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts too much. I think people talk a lot about like, oh, when you're in the inventory, you get a third person view
And
and you
look
can
around
kind of
walls.
see, yeah, stuff like that. But it's like, well, first off, the third person camera, like you can literally drive the camera around walls if you want.
I mean, they're going to
Um,
have to get rid of that too at some point.
yeah. And they could make they could just work with the, whatever it's called, bokeh lens. What's the word? Clarity. So it's like
Yeah,
everything's really fuzzy in the background. The only thing you see is your character. Like they could just do that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, we'll see. All right, man. To wrap things up, want to ask you to kind of summarize, I guess, what was the main topic here? We danced around it quite a bit, but as the game is growing this year, this whole playability push that they have, and just, I think, a different way they've been communicating, do you think that they are effectively taking a step into like what you would call early access for the game? I know it's all semantics, but like, do you feel like they're moving
Yeah.
on from this alpha phase effectively, or are they kind of lagging behind?
I hope so. I hope that they I hope that they just embrace the identity that the game has essentially been for years and just run with that, you know? I think early access games, when they call themselves early access and that's the way they develop their game, I think they're pretty well accepted. Players are used to that. There's a weird situation where it feels as though you're kind of hiding behind the alpha moniker at times. Maybe not intentionally, but it does kind of happen. But then all of a sudden, when the game is really cool and working, all of a sudden it's a playable now video game. And it's like, just live in the gray area that the game is in. Sometimes it sucks and sometimes it doesn't. And that's early access. And players are used to that. And most of us accept it. So I hope they do. I hope that they run with that. And I hope that they just kind of say, hey, we're, like there's no video game that's going to, like Cyberpunk said it was going to change how you view video games. And guess what? It didn't. It's just a video game. It's a
I
pretty
think it
cool
changed
video game, but
the
it's,
way a lot of people look at marketing for video games.
yeah, I mean, it didn't change the face of gaming. It just was a cool game that came out, got developed, and it's a good game. If CIG accepts that they aren't gonna, like, the world isn't gonna be forever. The gaming world is not gonna be forever changed when Star Citizen releases. It just isn't. It's gonna be a video game. It's gonna be a special one. So don't get me wrong. But I think if they just accept what they are, this is my opinion, but if they accept what they are as an early access game, I think that smooths out a lot of the communication and perspective issues that a lot of backers tend to have. Give it the title for kind of what it is, how it plays, how it's being developed, and then players can kind of settle into, this is what we're going to expect from this, um, and then you can just make your game.
You know, you're going to see in the comments. It's not out of alpha until they stop adding the features, which is
Yeah.
technically true, but you're
But
more
early
taking a
access games aren't
semantics.
out of early access until they stop adding the features. That's what early access is for. They keep adding. DayZ has added so many features to their game during early access. They
Maybe
did for
early
years.
access is the umbrella term.
Yeah, it's more, well, and that's the thing, is like, it's just something that maybe, like you said, it's just terminology. Maybe it doesn't matter that much. Probably going to have some comments there about like, oh, it just doesn't matter that much. Probably not. But anytime that you can message better, you should, right? And so this weird, like, sometimes it's super, super, super in alpha, and we kind of hide behind that. Sometimes it's this super cool playable experience with all this new stuff, and it's the coolest video game ever, and PC gamer should write a cool article about the newest thing. Okay, but PC gamer would do that about alpha or about early access games, and they wouldn't call it an alpha the whole time.
Well,
So
we can
to
get
me,
PC
I
Gamer
just kind of
too.
go, well, yeah, you'd have to get them to like Star Citizen first, but
I mean, they cover it enough, anyways.
yeah, that's true. But it's just an example. But it's just like, just live. In my opinion, I think live in the space that best describes your video game, and I think that's early access. And the players, I think, will thank you for it long term, because players understand what early access is at this point, and it's hard for players to understand what alpha, sometimes playable now, marketing videos. It's harder for players to wrap their head around that, especially new players. But if you tell a new player, like, hey, you want to try this new early access game? Any player would be like, either yes or no, right? Either I
I
play
think
early access games or I don't,
it
because
needs
they
to be
understand what early
consistent,
access
though.
means. Yeah.
It can't be like
Yeah.
Star Citizen's been up and down, like you're saying. Like, they need to make sure that month to month you're getting the same experience. I think that's what people would expect from something calling itself early access.
Yeah, for the most part. And I keep going back to DayZ just because it's one I played a lot in early access. But in DayZ early access, there were times the game just didn't work for weeks. There were
Yikes.
times where the zombies would run faster than you could, and so you would load in, and the first zombie you came across would just kill you because they were hard to kill at the time. Things like that just happened in early access, and it sucked. But that's a smaller game, of course, and a smaller
Good to
dev
know,
team,
though.
and
Yeah.
yeah. But it's just things like that do happen in early access, and it's not every early access game is like Fortnite.
Yeah, that's true. All right, man.
That is a good question somebody posed. Does changing the label to early access change how they monetize the game? I don't think so. I don't think that makes much of a difference. Maybe there's some legalities there, but I don't know.
All right, man.
Anyway.
Thank you for this talk so much. I appreciate it. It's a loaded discussion. I'm sure we'll have plenty of good conversation down below, guys. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I genuinely, honestly, wow, I've been sweating. It's heated.
Oh, wait. Before we go,
Hmm.
there's one question I did want to answer. What is CIG doing a really good job with right now? Can I answer that one?
Oh, yeah. Give it to us.
Okay. I think CIG is doing a pretty darn good job of messaging, and I think they're doing a good job of communication lately with patch notes and with developer, like the Star Citizen Live that happened yesterday. Please do more of those. We miss
Yeah.
ISCs, we miss Star Citizen Lives, we miss that kind of stuff. But I think the devs as a whole, I think, are doing a pretty good job of, like, you know, staying in that communication lane. And the monthly updates have been cool. You know, it's been good. So I wanted to answer that.
I would like a little more communication, but I do think that they've been doing a good job of communicating through action this year.
Right. Communicating through action might be a better way to put it. Yeah. So it's like we can always want more communication as, like, Spectrum posts and things
back,
like
man.
that. Yeah,
Tell us what's going on with the
I miss it
features.
so much. I do miss it a lot. But anyway, that's I wanted to. I saw that question early on, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm kind of excited to talk about that for a second."
Yeah, I mean, they're doing good
There we
things, and I feel like I need to stress that, like, even if we do a criticism or we talk about things that aren't making us happy, we're still happy with other things. Somebody said in the last episode that we're never happy, and I'm like, I am so often happy with this game.
I don't know if you guys know this, but I've never seen Space Tomato smile about anything ever.
I don't.
Unless he's talking crap about Star Citizen, or on the alternative side, completely shilling for it. So put in the comments if you guys think that he's a total shill, or if he's nothing but a doomium huffing, you know, hater.
This will show us who watched to the end.
As you guys know, this is the internet. There's no in between. You have to be one or the other, or both somehow. It's like Schrodinger's shill, you know.
That's a good ship name, dude.
I can't tell if I need more coffee or less. It's early. More. You guys don't know this, but he got me up at 6 o'clock this morning.
I'm sorry. Running the podcast when we're over in this time zone is so much more difficult for Americans. I am sorry.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
I got to pay my dues when we go back. I'll be up early, and then you'll have a normal timed one, I promise. Dude,
fair enough.
Thank you so much for joining me for this. Can you let the folks know where they can find your content, more of your quips?
Well, I'm going to start with this one. You can find me on YouTube, but they're all old videos. And I haven't put out a new one in a while. And I should. Every time I'm on this podcast, I keep saying I should make more YouTube videos. But that's what happens, man. I work full time and I make content also.
It's hard.
I'm trying to not die. You know?
Like, yeah, dude. That's a lot.
Anyway, mostly on Twitch. I post dumb stuff on Twitter X occasionally. So you can follow me there if you want. I don't know. And Twitch is where I do most of my work. So twitch.tv/Xerostate with an X. So there you go.
Dope, dude. Thanks again for joining me for this one. Appreciate your opinions. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. As always, you can find us on YouTube or on podcast platforms if you like those. We'll be back again next week with another great episode and another good talk, I assume. I hope. I mean, not to jinx it or anything. But
looking forward to watching that one. I don't know if I'm looking forward to watching myself because that's
you have to watch this one.
But
yeah. I'm going to ask you a quiz. I'm going to quiz you on it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching once again. I will see you all next week.